300 years ago, Earth was a lonely blue planet spinning in the darkness of space. Humans had not yet learned to travel between stars. They had not met other species. They lived their simple lives, unaware that the universe was filled with civilizations far older and more advanced than their own. In those days, a small village sat high in the mountains of Nepal. The people there were farmers and herders. They lived hard lives in the cold, thin air. They knew nothing of spacecraft or alien races. Their world was small, bounded by the peaks that surrounded their homes. One winter night, a strange light fell from the sky. It streaked across the darkness like a wounded bird, trailing smoke and fire. The villagers watched in fear as it crashed into a distant valley with a sound like thunder. Many wanted to hide. Many said it was a bad sign from the gods. But a young farmer named gathered a group of brave men and women. They took ropes and blankets and medicine. They walked through the snow for 2 days to reach the crash site. What they found changed everything. The object was not a meteor. It was a ship, broken and burning. And inside were creatures unlike anything the villagers had ever imagined. They had gray skin and large, dark eyes. Their limbs were long and thin. They bled a strange blue blood from terrible wounds. 7 of these beings lay among the wreckage. 3 were already dead. The other 4 were dying. The villagers could have run. They could have left these strange creatures to their fate. No one would have blamed them, but knelt beside one of the aliens and saw the fear in its eyes. He saw the pain. He saw a living thing that needed help. The villagers carried the survivors down the mountain. It took them 4 days. 2 of the villagers died from the cold and the effort, but they did not stop. They brought the aliens to their village and laid them in the warmest houses. They fed them soup and wrapped their wounds. They sat with them through long nights when death seemed certain. The alien captain was named. She was female, though the villagers did not know this at first. As weeks passed and she slowly healed, she learned to communicate with her rescuers through gestures and drawings. She tried to explain where she came from. She pointed at the stars and drew pictures of her home world. The villagers did not understand everything, but they understood enough. And her 3 surviving crew members lived in that village for 18 months. The villagers shared their food even when there was not enough. They gave up their beds and slept on cold floors. They treated the aliens like family. When a rescue ship finally arrived, wept. She had grown to love these simple, brave people. She tried to offer them gifts, advanced technology that would change their lives forever, but the village elder refused. He said they had not helped expecting payment. They had helped because it was right. Returned to her home world of, she lived for another 60 years, rising to become a leader among her people. But she never forgot the humans who saved her. Before she died, she recorded the story in the archives. She declared a debt of honor, a debt of life. She made her people swear to remember. They were a peaceful species. They had no weapons, no armies, no warships. They were scientists and philosophers and healers. They believed that violence was the mark of primitive minds. For thousands of years, they had survived by being useful to other species and threatening no one. They kept their promise too. They remembered the debt. They watched humanity grow and spread across the stars. They celebrated quietly when humans finally achieved faster than light travel. They smiled when Earth joined the Galactic Council as a minor member species. But they were weak, and weakness attracts predators. The Dominion was everything they were not. They were conquerors, slavers, destroyers. Their empire spanned 200 worlds, all taken by force. They respected nothing but power. They saw thee and their undefended worlds as easy prey. The invasion began without warning. Warships appeared in space and began bombing cities. There was no declaration of war, no demands, no negotiation. They simply started killing. They had nowhere to run. They sent desperate messages to every species they knew, begging for help. The Galactic Council debated and discussed and ultimately decided to do nothing. They were not members. Their fate was not the Council's concern. 6 colony worlds fell in the first month. Billions died. The survivors fled toward Prime, the home world, knowing it would be next. They had no weapons to fight back. They had no ships fast enough to escape. They could only wait for death. In the chaos, someone remembered the ancient debt. Someone found recording in the archives. A young communication officer named worked for 3 days without sleep, boosting the signal strength of her transmitter. She aimed it toward human space and sent a message. It was not a demand. It was not even a request. It was simply a reminder. 300 years ago, you were strangers who fell from the sky. We saved you because it was right. Now we are dying. If the debt means anything, please help us. Commander Samuel Hayes received the message on his patrol ship, the Enduring Hope. He was 42 years old, a veteran of 20 years in Earth's Navy. He had a wife named and 2 daughters waiting for him back on Earth. He had been looking forward to retirement in a few years. He read the message 3 times. Then he pulled up everything he could find about he learned about and the village in Nepal. He learned about the debt of honor. He learned that an entire species was being exterminated while the galaxy watched and did nothing. Samuel walked to his communication station and opened a secure channel to Earth Command. His hand was steady. His voice was calm. But inside, something old and powerful was waking up. Something that ran deep in human blood. The need to protect. The refusal to abandon friends. The willingness to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Admiral Price answered his call. She was 60 years old, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen too many battles. She listened without interrupting as Samuel explained the situation. When he finished, there was a long silence, then spoke. "Get your ship to the rendezvous point. I am calling in the fleet." Samuel felt a chill run down his spine. The fleet. For 200 years, humanity had hidden its true military strength. They had built warships in secret, trained soldiers in hidden bases, developed weapons that no other species knew about. They had smiled and traded and pretended to be harmless newcomers. Now the pretending was over. They had saved human lives when humanity was nothing. They had asked for nothing in return. They had simply done what was right. Now humanity would do the same. Samuel set a course for the rendezvous point. Behind him, across human space, hundreds of other ships were doing the same. The greatest fleet Earth had ever assembled was coming together. The debt would be repaid. The Galactic Council chamber floated at the heart of Nexus Station, the largest space station ever built. 12 species held permanent seats here. They controlled trade routes, settled disputes, and decided the fate of billions. Their word was law across 1,000 star systems. Ambassador Daniel Grant stood at the petitioner's podium, feeling very small. He was 38 years old, a career diplomat who had spent 15 years learning how to smile while being insulted. He had represented humanity on dozens of minor trade deals and border disputes, but today was different. Today he was asking the most powerful beings in the galaxy to go to war. The chamber was circular, with each species seated on a floating platform that could move closer or farther depending on their importance to the discussion. Humanity's platform was at the edge, barely within speaking range. Daniel had to raise his voice to be heard. "Distinguished members of the council," he began, "I come before you with an urgent matter. The people face extinction. The Dominion has launched an unprovoked invasion of their space. 6 colony worlds have already fallen. Billions have died. The home world of Prime is under direct threat." He paused, looking around the chamber. Some representatives were paying attention. Most were not. The High Chancellor was examining her claws. The delegate was having a quiet conversation with his aide. "Humanity formally requests council intervention to stop this genocide," Daniel continued. "They are a peaceful species. They have no military. They cannot defend themselves. Without help, they will be completely destroyed within weeks." High Chancellor of the Collective finally looked up. She had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on her pale face. Her species had held the leadership of the council for 3 centuries. She was not used to being bothered by minor species. "They are not council members," she said. Her voice was cold and flat. "They refused membership 300 years ago. Their fate is not our concern." Daniel kept his face calm even as anger burned in his chest. "They refused membership because they have no military. Membership requires contributing forces to council defense fleets. They are pacifists. They build hospitals, not warships. They heal the sick and study the stars. They are no threat to anyone." Then perhaps they should have considered the consequences of remaining defenseless. The voice came from representative of the. His species was allied with the Dominion. They shared the same philosophy. The strong ruled. The weak served or died. Was large and heavily muscled, with thick gray scales covering his body. His eyes were yellow and showed no emotion at all. "The natural order is simple," continued. "Those who cannot protect themselves do not deserve protection. They made their choice. Now they face the results of that choice. This is how the universe works." Daniel gripped the podium to keep his hands from shaking. He wanted to reach across the chamber and strangle this creature. But he was a diplomat. He had a job to do. "The saved human lives," he said slowly. 300 years ago, when humanity was still confined to Earth, a ship crashed in our mountains. The crew was dying. They had no hope of rescue. Simple farmers from a remote village found them and saved them. They carried them down frozen mountains. They fed them and healed them. They lost 2 of their own people in the effort, and they asked for nothing in return. He looked around the chamber again. A few more representatives were paying attention now. "Humanity does not forget its debts," Daniel said. "They showed us kindness when we were nothing. They helped us when we had nothing to offer. Now they need our help. We cannot abandon them." High Chancellor waved one of her 4 hands dismissively. "A touching story. But sentiment is not a basis for galactic policy. The Council will not risk war with the Dominion over a species that chose weakness." "The Dominion is committing genocide," Daniel said. "How can the Council stand by and watch an entire species be exterminated?" "The Dominion is a powerful trading partner," replied. "They control valuable resources and shipping lanes. Confronting them would destabilize the entire region. The economic consequences would be severe." Daniel felt something shift inside him. For 15 years, he had played the diplomatic game. He had smiled and nodded and accepted insults with grace. He had believed that patience and reason would eventually earn humanity respect and influence. Now he understood the truth. These beings did not respect patience or reason. They respected only power. They would let billions of innocent people die to protect their trade routes and profit margins. "Let me make sure I understand," Daniel said. His voice was still calm, but there was something new in it, something hard and cold. "The Council refuses to help them because it would be inconvenient, because it might affect your economies, because they are stronger than they are." "That is a crude summary, but essentially correct," said. "The Council must consider the greater good." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then let the record show that humanity asked. We gave the Council every opportunity to do the right thing. We appealed to your principles and your conscience. You chose to do nothing." He straightened his jacket and looked directly at High Chancellor. "Remember this moment. Remember that you had a choice, because what happens next is on your hands." "Is that a threat?" Ambassador asked. Her 4 eyes narrowed. "It is a statement of fact," Daniel replied. "Humanity will not abandon the. We will settle our debt with or without the Council's help. And when this is over, when the history of this moment is written, everyone will know exactly who stood for justice and who stood aside." He turned and walked toward the exit. The chamber was silent. No one had ever spoken to the Council that way. Minor species did not threaten the established powers. They accepted their place and hoped for scraps from the table. Ambassador Grant called out, If humanity takes unilateral action against the Dominion, the Council will not support you. You will be alone. Daniel stopped at the door and looked back. He smiled, but it was not a diplomat's smile. It was something older and more dangerous. We have always been alone, he said. From the moment we crawled out of the mud and looked up at the stars, we have faced every challenge alone. We are used to it. He walked out of the chamber and did not look back. On his personal communicator, a message was waiting. It was from Admiral Price. 2 words. Fleet ready. Daniel read the message and felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. In a few hours, humanity would go to war. They would fight against a much larger enemy with no allies and no support. Many would die. But they would live. The debt would be paid. Daniel typed a reply to Admiral Price. 2 words. Send them. Across human space, 300 warships began their jump sequence. The largest human fleet ever assembled vanished from normal space, reappearing at the edge of territory. The Council had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really made of. Admiral Price stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Unconquered, watching her fleet assemble in the darkness beyond Mars. 300 warships hung in the void like sleeping giants, their running lights blinking against the endless black. Destroyers and frigates darted between the larger vessels, taking up formation positions. Troop carriers loaded with Marines waited for the signal to jump. Was 60 years old. Her hair had gone silver a decade ago, and the lines on her face told the story of a lifetime spent in service. She had commanded ships since she was 25. She had trained the officers who now commanded their own vessels. She had helped design the weapons they would use in the coming battle. For 200 years, humanity had prepared for this day. They had joined the Galactic Council with smiles and handshakes. They had built trading posts and established diplomatic relations. They had carefully cultivated an image of peaceful merchants and curious explorers. And all the while, in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and buried in moons, they had built a war machine. General Christopher Moore appeared on the holographic display beside. He was 55, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and the calm eyes of someone who had seen combat many times. He commanded humanity's ground forces, 800,000 Marines trained to fight in any environment. Ground forces are loaded and ready, Christopher reported. Full combat gear, heavy weapons, armored vehicles. We have been running simulations against tactics for 30 years. We know how they fight. We know their weaknesses. Nodded, what about the new systems? Deployed on all front-line vessels, Christopher said. They have never faced anything like them. No one has. When those weapons fire, it will change the way the galaxy thinks about humanity. Looked out at her fleet. Every ship out there represented years of secret work. Engineers and scientists had devoted their lives to creating vessels that could match anything in the galaxy. Soldiers had trained in hidden bases, running combat exercises over and over until they could fight in their sleep. The galaxy thought humans were soft, said. They thought we spent the last 2 centuries building shopping centers and vacation resorts. They forgot where we came from. She turned to face Christopher's image. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages, plagues, predators, starvation. We survived all of it. We fought our way to the top of our food chain with rocks and sticks. We went from caves to starships in 10,000 years. No other species in the galaxy has ever advanced that fast. Christopher smiled grimly. To think they are warriors. They have conquered a few hundred worlds over the past 1,000 years. They have never met a species that fights like we do. Tell me about their fleet, At said. 800 warships, Christopher replied. Mostly cruisers and destroyers with about 50 capital ships. Standard tactics, which means aggressive frontal assaults with overwhelming firepower. They are not subtle, but they are effective against species that do not fight back. And their ground forces. Approximately 2 million soldiers spread across the system. Most are concentrated on Prime, systematically clearing cities. They are not taking prisoners. This is extermination, not conquest. Felt her jaw tighten. The killed civilians, like other species, harvested crops. They saw nothing wrong with wiping out an entire people. To them, they were simply weak creatures who deserved to die. She thought about the story Daniel Grant had told her. A village in Nepal, 300 years ago. Simple farmers carrying wounded aliens down frozen mountains, giving up their own beds and food to save strangers from the sky. 2 villagers dying from the cold because they refused to stop helping. That was who humans were. That was who they had always been. They helped those who needed help. They protected those who could not protect themselves. And when someone threatened their friends, they fought with everything they had. Signal all ships, said. Prepare for jump in 10 minutes. Her communications officer relayed the order. Across the fleet, crews rushed to their battle stations. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. Pilots climbed into fighter cockpits and ran final system checks. Commander Samuel Hayes responded from the Enduring Hope, his patrol ship now part of the assault fleet. First assault wing ready, Admiral. We will hit their flank and draw attention while the main force engages. Smiled, Samuel was a good officer. He had been the one to receive the distress call. He had been the one to alert Earth Command. Without him, the fleet might not have mobilized in time. Do not take unnecessary risks, Commander, she said. We need every ship we have. Understood, Admiral, but with respect, we did not come here to play it safe. We came here to win. Nodded, that was the right attitude. They had 800 ships. Humanity had 300. The numbers were not in their favor, but numbers were not everything. They had never fought humans before. They did not know what they were facing. They expected the same easy victory they had won against dozens of other species. They were about to get the shock of their lives. All ships broadcast to the entire fleet. In a few minutes, we will jump into space. We will engage a larger enemy force. Many of us will not survive this battle. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we are not here for glory or conquest. We are here to repay a debt. 300 years ago, when humanity was weak and alone, they showed us kindness. They saved our people without expecting anything in return. Now they face extinction while the galaxy watches and does nothing. His voice hardened. We will not watch. We will not stand aside. We will show that their kindness was not wasted. We will show the galaxy that humanity does not forget its debts. And we will show the Dominion that attacking our friends was the worst mistake they ever made. She looked out at the fleet one last time. All ships jump on my mark. Let us go settle a debt. The countdown began. 300 human warships aligned their jump drives. Engines hummed with power. Crews took deep breaths and thought of home. Mark said. The fleet vanished from the Sol system. Space folded around them, carrying them across light years in an instant. They emerged at the edge of space, directly between the invasion fleet and Prime. They detected them immediately. 800 alien warships turned to face this unexpected threat. Commanders sent confused messages to each other. Who were these newcomers? Why would anyone interfere in Dominion affairs? Opened a channel to the fleet. This is Admiral Price of the Earth Defense Force. You are committing genocide against the people. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. There was a long pause. Then a voice responded, harsh and mocking. Humans, you send 300 ships against our 800. You are either very brave or very stupid. Stand aside or die with the weaklings you came to save. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. We choose neither, she said, and then she gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. All ships weapons free, attack. The Battle of Prime began with fire and thunder. Commander Samuel Hayes pushed his patrol ship Enduring Hope to maximum speed, leading the first assault wing directly into the formation. 12 frigates followed him, small and fast, their weapons blazing. They were not trying to destroy the fleet. They were trying to make the enemy angry. It worked. The commander diverted 50 ships to chase these annoying humans who dared to attack first. That was exactly what had planned. While they focused on Samuel's wing, the main human fleet hit them from 3 different directions at once. They had never seen tactics like this. Other species formed neat lines and exchanged fire at long range. It was civilized. It was predictable. It was how war had been fought in the galaxy for thousands of years. Humans did not fight that way. Human ships closed to point-blank range, accepting damage to inflict worse. They moved in coordinated groups, supporting each other, covering weaknesses, exploiting every opening. They fought like pack hunters, surrounding larger prey and tearing it apart piece by piece. Lieutenant Maria Santos flew her fighter through the chaos, her squadron of 12 pilots staying tight on her wing. She was 26 years old, born on Mars, trained since age 18 to fly combat spacecraft. This was her first real battle, but she felt no fear, only focus. "Target that cruiser's engine section," she ordered. "Torpedoes spread on my mark." Her squadron lined up their shots. 12 torpedoes launched simultaneously, converging on the cruiser's vulnerable stern. The ship's shields held against the first wave but buckled under the second. Explosions ripped through the engine compartment. The cruiser went dark and began to drift. "Good hits," Maria broadcast. "Move to next target." Behind her, human marine boarding ships were already approaching the disabled cruiser. Teams of soldiers in powered armor would cut through the hull and clear the ship deck by deck. Capturing enemy vessels meant more resources for the fight ahead. On the bridge of the Unconquered, Admiral Price watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. It was going better than she had hoped. They were larger in number, but they were slow to adapt. They kept trying to form traditional battle lines while human ships danced around them, striking and withdrawing, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. "Admiral," her weapons officer reported, "the new pulse cannons are exceeding expectations. Shields are not designed to handle that frequency. We are cutting through them like paper." Nodded. 20 years of research had gone into those weapons. Human scientists had studied every species in the galaxy, looking for weaknesses, developing counters. The thought their technology was superior. They were learning otherwise. 4 hours into the battle, they had lost 200 ships. Humanity had lost 30. The enemy commander was starting to panic. His confident mocking had turned to desperate orders. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy half their size. But the space battle was only part of the fight. On the surface of Prime, General Christopher Moore led the ground assault. Human troop carriers dropped through the atmosphere under heavy fire, landing in zones cleared by orbital bombardment. Marines poured out of the ships before they had even touched down, hitting the ground running. Sargent was first out of his carrier. He was 35 years old, a veteran of training exercises on a dozen different worlds. But this was his first real combat, the first time he would kill or be killed. The ground forces were waiting for them, huge scaled warriors with plasma rifles and energy blades. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never lost a ground battle. They had never faced human marines. Led his platoon through the streets of a city, moving from cover to cover. Soldiers fired at them from windows and rooftops, returned fire with precise bursts, dropping enemies with shots to vulnerable joints and eye slits. His training had prepared him for exactly this. "Medic front," he called out as one of his Marines went down with a leg wound. "Get him stabilized and moving." The platoon pushed forward. They were not trying to hold territory. They were hunting. Find the command posts, destroy their communications, cut off their supply lines, make them blind and confused. Ahead saw a group of civilians huddled against a wall. They were terrified, shaking, waiting to die. They had been systematically executing anyone they found. Pointed at two of his Marines. Get those people to the zone, move fast. The Marines nodded and ran to help watched as they gently guided the aliens towards safety, speaking softly even though they could not understand their words. The tone was what mattered, the kindness. A child broke away from the group and ran toward. She was small, with the same gray skin and large dark eyes as all her species. She was crying, reaching for him. Scooped her up with one arm, holding her against his chest, while he kept his rifle ready with the other hand. The child buried her face against his shoulder, trembling. "It is okay," he said softly. "We have got you. You are safe now." He carried her for 3 blocks, fighting with one hand while protecting her with the other. When they reached the evacuation point, he handed her to a medic with strict instructions to find her family. The battle lasted 11 hours. By the end, the fleet had lost 463 ships. The survivors were fleeing into deep space, their commander dead, their formation shattered. Humanity had lost 87 vessels. Thousands of human soldiers had died on the ground. But Prime was free. Admiral Price broadcast a message to the retreating ships. "Tell your masters what happened here today. Tell them the debt is paid, and tell them what will happen if they ever threaten our friends again." On the surface, the fighting was over. Human soldiers moved through the ruined cities, pulling survivors from rubble, treating wounds, distributing food and water. They set up field hospitals and refugee camps. They held dying in their arms and spoke words of comfort. They watched in disbelief. These strange beings from a distant world had come across the galaxy to save them. They had fought and bled and died for people they had never met. And now they were helping with the same gentleness that ancestors had once shown to wounded humans in a mountain village. An old approached General Moore as he supervised the relief efforts. The alien was frail and walked with difficulty, but his eyes were clear. "Why did you come?" they asked through a translator. "We are nothing to you. We have nothing to offer. Why did you sacrifice so much for us?" Christopher looked at the old alien for a long moment. Then he smiled. 300 years ago, your people saved ours when we had nothing to offer either. You did not ask why. You just helped. That is who you are. And this is who we are. We pay our debts. We protect our friends, always." The old bowed his head. Tears ran down his gray cheeks. "Then the debt is more than paid," he whispered. "You have given us back our future." Christopher put a hand on the alien's shoulder. "The debt is not about keeping score. It is about remembering who helped you when you needed it most. Your people showed us something 300 years ago. They showed us that kindness matters, that helping strangers matters. We are just returning the lesson." Around them, humans worked side by side, beginning the long process of rebuilding. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. And across the galaxy, word was spreading. The humans had come, the humans had fought, the humans had won. Nothing would ever be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Battle of Prime. Every seat was filled. Every representative had come in person, not sending aides or holograms. The chamber was completely silent as the holographic displays showed footage from the battle. Human warships tearing through the formation. Human soldiers liberating cities. Human medics treating wounded aliens. Human engineers clearing rubble and rebuilding infrastructure. But it was not the battle footage that made the council representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. It was the intelligence reports that came with it. The reports revealed what humanity had been hiding for 2 centuries. Secret shipyards in asteroid fields. Hidden training facilities on remote moons. Weapons research programs that had produced technology the galaxy had never seen. A military force that had been carefully designed to counter every major power in the galaxy. For 200 years, while the Council had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers, humanity had been preparing for war, not attacking anyone, not threatening anyone, just quietly building the capacity to defend themselves and their friends against any enemy. High Chancellor read the intelligence summaries with growing unease. The humans had vessels that could match battleships. They had weapons that could cut through armor. They had tactics that no species had ever seen before. And they had kept all of it secret. They had smiled and traded and pretended to be harmless. They had let the galaxy underestimate them. Until now. Ambassador Daniel Grant walked to the petitioner's podium. He moved differently than he had 3 days ago. There was no diplomatic smile, no careful deference. He looked like a man who no longer cared what anyone in the chamber thought of him. 300 years ago, Daniel began, saved human lives. They did not know us. They had no reason to help us. They did it because it was right, because that is who they are. He paused and looked around the chamber. Every representative was watching him now. No one was having side conversations. No one was examining their claws or checking messages. Humanity never forgot, Daniel continued. We built our fleet in secret because we knew this day would come. We knew that someday, somewhere, our friends would need us, and we were determined to be ready. He turned to face representative of the scaled alien had been much less confident since the battle reports came in. His ally, the Dominion, had just suffered the worst military defeat in their history. The Dominion has threatened retaliation, Daniel said. They claim this means war with humanity. Let me be clear about our position. His voice hardened. We welcome it. We have spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this scenario. Your masters should understand something about how humans fight wars. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes locked on. We do not fight for territory or resources. We do not fight to prove our strength or expand our empire. When humans go to war, we fight to win. Completely. Permanently. We have weapons you have never seen, tactics you cannot predict, and soldiers who would rather die than abandon their mission. The chamber was utterly silent. But that is not why I am here today, Daniel said. He turned to address the full council. I am here to deliver a message. He walked slowly in front of the semicircle of floating platforms, making eye contact with each representative in turn. You abandoned them because they were weak, because they could not fight back, because protecting the innocent was not profitable or convenient. You calculated the costs and benefits, and you decided that letting billions die was acceptable. Several representatives looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Humanity will not forget that either, Daniel said. From this day forward, the people are under our permanent protection. Anyone who threatens them threatens us. Anyone who harms them answers to us. He stopped in the center of the chamber and raised his voice. And let this be known to every species in the galaxy. If any other people ever find themselves abandoned by this council, betrayed by those who should protect them, left to die because helping them is too inconvenient, they can call on humanity. Daniel's voice rang through the chamber. We pay our debts, we protect our friends, we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, and we never ever forget. He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. High Chancellor finally found her voice. Ambassador Grant. She paused, seeming to struggle with what to say. The Council acknowledges humanity's actions at Prime. Perhaps we were too hasty in our earlier decision. Daniel stopped at the door. He did not turn around. Perhaps, he said, but they do not need your protection anymore. They have ours, and that is worth more than any council resolution. He walked out. In the days that followed, everything changed. The Dominion quietly, its demands for retaliation. Their leaders had studied the battle reports. They had seen what human weapons could do. They decided that revenge was not worth the risk. Other species began reaching out to humanity through diplomatic channels. Some wanted to trade. Some wanted military alliances. Some simply wanted to understand how the humans had hidden so much for so long. But the most significant change happened among the smaller species, the ones who had always lived in fear of larger powers, the ones who had been exploited and threatened and ignored by the Council for centuries. They began to hope. Word spread through the galaxy about what humanity had done. A species had been dying and humans had crossed the stars to save them, not for profit, not for territory, not for power, just because it was right. Messages began arriving at Earth embassies, cautious at first, then more confident. Stories of old debts and forgotten kindnesses, species that had helped humans decades ago, never expecting anything in return. Now they were in trouble, and they remembered that humans pay their debts. Admiral Price read the messages in her office on Earth. She was tired. The battle had cost her friends and subordinates. The rebuilding of the fleet would take years, but she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Pride. "We cannot save everyone," her aide said. "There are too many requests." Nodded, "I know, but we can save some, and for the ones we save, we will be the difference between life and death." She looked out her window at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere out there, they were rebuilding their world. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was recalculating everything they thought they knew about humanity. And somewhere out there, species who had given up hope were starting to believe that the galaxy could be different. 300 years ago, humans had been alone and afraid. They had looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone was out there. They had dreamed of finding friends among the distant suns. Now they knew the truth. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of life and wonder and terrible dangers. It was a place where the strong often preyed on the weak, where kindness was rare and easily forgotten. But it was also a place where a single act of compassion could echo across centuries, where a village of farmers could save alien strangers and never know that their kindness would one day save billions of lives. Humanity had settled its debt, and the Galactic Council would never see them the same way again. On Prime, the reconstruction continued. Human engineers worked alongside builders, raising new cities from the ashes of the old. Human soldiers stood guard while they planted gardens and opened schools. And in the central plaza of the rebuilt capital, a new monument was being constructed. It showed a human soldier holding a child, protecting her from harm. At the base, in both human and script, were carved simple words that captured everything. Kindness remembered, debt repaid, friends forever. The debt was paid, but the friendship would last forever. And that was worth more than all the warships in the galaxy.